Goddess Worship and Divine Feminine in India. Part 1. Shakti, the power that moves the universe. Shakti is one of the most profound ideas in Indian spirituality, for it expresses the vision that the divine is not only masculine, but also powerfully feminine. The word Shakti literally means power, energy, or force, and in mythology, it is the dynamic aspect of the divine, without which creation itself cannot occur. The gods, however mighty they appear, are often said to be powerless without Shakti, and in many stories, their strength is borrowed or gifted through the presence of the goddess. Shakti is not merely an abstract idea, but a living, breathing presence worshipped in countless forms across India, ranging from benign motherly figures to fierce protectors and cosmic warriors. The belief emphasizes that the feminine principle is inseparable from existence. The understanding of Shakti is rooted in the idea that all manifestation requires energy. Shiva without Shakti is often compared to a corpse, inert and still, while Shakti animates, stirs, and creates movement. This is why Indian tradition envisions divinity as a union of Purusha, the passive spirit, and Prakriti, the active energy. The balance of these two gives rise to the cosmos. Yet it is Shakti that makes potential into reality, like the spark that ignites wood into fire. She is thus the embodiment of creativity, fertility, and also destruction, for energy can both nurture and consume. Philosophers and mystics have always returned to the insight that worshipping Shakti is worshipping life's very pulse. The goddess is, therefore, both personal and universal. Throughout Indian mythology, the goddess appears whenever balance is disturbed, and demons grow arrogant with their conquests. The story of Durga is perhaps the clearest symbol of this truth. When the Devas were defeated by the buffalo demon Mahishasura, their combined energies formed Durga, radiant with weapons from every god. She emerged not as a dependent figure, but as an autonomous power, fighting for cosmic order. Her triumph is celebrated in Navaratri, where 9 nights are dedicated to different aspects of Shakti. This myth reveals that the feminine principle is not secondary, but primary, invoked when even the gods fail. She alone could overcome what none of them individually could. The worship of Shakti thus affirms that ultimate strength is feminine in essence. The worship of Shakti is not confined to grand temples or philosophical texts, but pulses through the rhythms of ordinary life. Women, often seen as embodiments of Shakti, are revered in rituals like Kumari Puja, where a young girl is honored as the goddess herself. Festivals such as Navaratri, Durga Puja, and Kali Puja remind entire communities that the feminine divine holds sway over destiny. This reverence extends beyond rituals, shaping cultural values and household worship. The goddess is seen as the source of abundance in the form of Lakshmi, wisdom in the form of Saraswati, and transformative power in the form of Kali. Each home can thus host her presence, making her worship intimate and communal at once. Philosophically, the worship of Shakti finds its deepest roots in the Shakta tradition, where she is not simply one aspect of divinity, but the supreme reality itself. The Devi Mahatmya, one of the key texts of Shakta literature, proclaims the goddess as the one who pervades the 3 worlds, the source of both bondage and liberation. She is the beginning and the end, the womb of creation and its destroyer. In Tantra, she is worshipped as Kundalini, the coiled energy lying dormant within every human being, waiting to rise and unite with Shiva at the crown of the head. This symbolizes the journey of awakening, where the divine feminine is not outside but within, and liberation comes from honoring her movement inside one's own being. The landscapes of India are dotted with Shakti Pithas, sacred sites where parts of the goddess Sati are said to have fallen after her self-immolation. These shrines stretch across the subcontinent, from Kamakya in Assam to Vaishno Devi in Jammu, symbolizing that the goddess is not bound to one region but to the entire land. Pilgrimage to these places is not only an act of devotion, but also a recognition of India as a body of Shakti, each site resonating with her energy. Such a vision makes geography itself sacred, reminding worshippers that divine feminine power saturates not just temples, but mountains, rivers, and forests. The land is a mother because Shakti is its soul. Yet the worship of Shakti has not always been comfortable or tame. In her fierce forms such as Kali, Chandi, or Chamunda, she terrifies as much as she blesses. She drinks blood, stands upon corpses, and shatters the illusion of permanence. These images often disturb modern minds, yet their symbolism is profound. Kali is time, the unstoppable force that devours all beings, yet she is also compassion itself, for she frees the soul from ignorance. The tantric practitioners who worship her see in her terrible form the truth of existence. That energy is wild, uncontrollable, and beyond moral categories. To embrace Shakti is to embrace both creation and dissolution. The goddess is never one-dimensional. The everyday devotion to Shakti also reveals how the feminine divine bridges human concerns with cosmic principles. Lakshmi, for example, embodies wealth and prosperity, but also ethical living and gratitude, as true wealth is not only material, but spiritual. Saraswati represents learning, music, and knowledge, guiding both scholars and artists. These forms show that Shakti permeates every aspect of human life, from sustenance to wisdom. The household shrines where these goddesses are worshipped affirm that divine energy is not distant, but woven into daily existence. Shakti is as much about the rice in a family's kitchen as about the stars moving across the heavens. Importantly, Shakti worship has empowered many movements of resistance and self-assertion. Women have often found strength in invoking the goddess as their protector and guide. Folk traditions across India depict local goddesses who guard villages, cure diseases, and punish injustice. These local deities, often fierce and unpolished, reflect the lived realities of communities. They embody the belief that divine feminine power is accessible to all, not just those who enter grand temples. Shakti thus transcends hierarchy, offering her strength to the poor, the marginalized, and those who call upon her with sincerity. In these ways, goddess worship has served as a cultural anchor for resilience and renewal. At a deeper level, the idea of Shakti challenges the notion of divinity as male-dominated. By affirming that power itself is feminine, Indian spirituality offers a worldview where masculine and feminine are not opposites, but complements. The dance of Shiva and Shakti is eternal, representing the interplay of consciousness and energy. Their union is not hierarchical, but essential, for neither exists fully without the other. This vision is profound in its implications, suggesting that the universe itself is a relationship, a constant weaving of stillness and movement, silence and sound. In this, Shakti is not only worshipped but also philosophically revered as the essence of existence. In conclusion, Shakti as the power that moves the universe represents both the metaphysical energy behind creation and the intimate presence of the goddess in daily life. She is the mother, the warrior, the destroyer, and the protector, encompassing all contradictions within herself. Her worship unites philosophy, ritual, myth, and social practice, reminding people that the divine feminine is indispensable to life. By honoring Shakti, Indian spirituality celebrates the energy that animates the cosmos and sustains the smallest household alike. Shakti remains eternal, for she is the pulse that moves all things, the power without which nothing can exist. Part 2. Durga, the warrior goddess who slays inner demons. Durga stands at the heart of goddess worship in India as a radiant embodiment of strength, courage, and divine protection. She is not only a figure from myth, but also a living presence in the cultural and spiritual life of millions. Her image is both fierce and compassionate, a mother who nurtures yet one who unsheathes her sword against forces of chaos. Durga is most famously remembered for the slaying of Mahishasura, the buffalo demon who terrorized gods and mortals alike. This battle, described in the Devi Mahatmya, is symbolic on multiple levels. While on the surface it represents the triumph of good over evil, at a deeper level it reveals Durga as the goddess who helps humanity conquer the inner demons of pride, anger, greed, and delusion. The legend of Mahishasura's defeat is a narrative that continues to resonate because of its layered meanings. Mahishasura, who could change form between man and buffalo, represents the instability of human desires, constantly shifting and never satisfied. No god could defeat him, for he had obtained a boon that made him invincible against male deities. It was then that the divine feminine rose in her full majesty. The combined energies of the gods merged into a single dazzling presence, and Durga emerged, armed with weapons given by every deity. The trident of Shiva, the discus of Vishnu, the thunderbolt of Indra, and countless other symbols of power were placed in her hands. This imagery makes it clear that all divine authority rests within her, not as borrowed force, but as her rightful essence. She is Shakti in its most concentrated form. Durga's battle against Mahishasura is not just a mythic war, but a psychological allegory. Every human being struggles with their own Mahishasura, the instincts and impulses that drag the mind into ignorance. The buffalo itself is a symbol of tamas, the inertia that resists growth and pulls the soul downward. Durga's victory thus becomes a reminder that spiritual progress requires inner battles, and the goddess herself represents the energy needed to overcome them. By worshipping Durga, devotees invoke not just a protective mother, but also an inner force that awakens courage, clarity, and discipline. This is why Navaratri, the 9 nights dedicated to her, is also a period of fasting, self-purification, and inner renewal. The celebration of Durga Puja in Bengal is perhaps the most vivid expression of goddess worship in India. For days, elaborately crafted idols of the goddess, standing upon the defeated buffalo demon, are worshipped with music, dance, and ritual. Families gather, communities unite, and the city itself transforms into a theater of devotion. Yet the deeper significance lies in the symbolism of immersion. On the last day, the goddess is carried to the river and immersed in water, reminding worshippers that she is not gone but dissolved into the elements, ever present and waiting to be invoked again. This act reflects the cyclical rhythm of life, where the divine feminine rises whenever darkness takes hold. Durga is more than a destroyer of demons. She is also the mother of the universe. In prayer, she is called Jagatmata, the mother of all beings, who listens to the cries of her children and responds with both love and sternness. Her dual role is what makes her unique. Unlike male gods, who are often specialized in particular domains, Durga encompasses creation, preservation, and destruction. She can smile gently upon her devotee, yet terrify her enemies with her fierce roar. This paradox is central to understanding her worship, for she reflects the reality of existence itself, nurturing and fierce, compassionate and relentless. To see Durga is to see life's wholeness, not divided into fragments of good and evil, but united in a cosmic balance. The psychological dimension of Durga's worship becomes clearer when we consider her iconography. She is depicted with 10 arms, each holding a weapon or symbol. These arms are not merely signs of external strength, but metaphors for inner virtues that one must cultivate. The trident stands for clarity that pierces through illusion, the sword for sharpness of intellect, the conch for the call to awakening, and the lotus for purity amidst struggle. Her mount, the lion or tiger, symbolizes untamed power under control, suggesting that true mastery is not suppression of instincts, but their harnessing. When devotees meditate upon her image, they are not only venerating a deity but also internalizing these qualities as part of their spiritual practice. Durga's worship also speaks to the empowerment of women in Indian culture. She embodies the truth that feminine power is not passive but active, capable of both tenderness and resistance. In times of social and political struggle, her image has often been invoked as a symbol of strength. During India's independence movement, for example, the image of Bharat Mata was frequently drawn with Durga-like features, representing the motherland rising to free her children from oppression. In this way, Durga transcends myth and becomes a cultural force, inspiring courage not only in individuals but in entire societies. Her worship thus has always been more than ritual. It is a declaration that feminine strength is indispensable to both spiritual and worldly life. Another profound dimension of Durga's worship is the balance it seeks between fear and faith. Devotees approach her with awe, recognizing her immense power, yet also with intimacy, knowing her as mother. This relationship is unlike that with many other deities, where the tone is primarily reverence or supplication. With Durga, there is also trust and surrender. Her promise is protection, but her demand is sincerity. She accepts no half-hearted devotion, for to call upon her is to invite transformation. This is why the 9 nights of Navaratri are seen as an inner journey, where one layer of ignorance is stripped away with each day, until the final night celebrates the triumph of light over darkness. Tantric traditions deepen this vision of Durga as the slayer of inner demons. In Tantra, demons are not external entities but patterns of thought, emotional attachments, and psychological blockages. Worshipping Durga in this framework becomes a meditative act where the practitioner seeks to awaken her within, unleashing the energy that dissolves ignorance. Kali, who is considered an aspect of Durga, takes this even further by confronting the devotee with death itself, demanding that the ego surrender completely. Yet whether in her fierce or motherly form, Durga represents liberation from bondage, not by escape, but by courageously facing what must be destroyed. The multiplicity of Durga's forms also reflects her universal relevance. In some regions, she is worshipped as Amba, the mother goddess of Gujarat, in others as Bhavani or Chandika. In each case, the core remains the same. She is the protector who arises in moments of crisis. Her adaptability shows how deeply the idea of the divine feminine is woven into Indian culture. The goddess is not locked in ancient myths, but constantly reshaped to meet the needs of the present. This fluidity ensures that her worship remains alive, not as a relic of the past, but as a force for the future. Philosophically, Durga symbolizes the harmony of opposites. Her very name means the one who is difficult to approach, yet she is also accessible through devotion. She represents energy that is both terrifying and compassionate. In slaying Mahishasura, she does not annihilate energy itself, but transforms it, reminding us that destruction is never the end but a rechanneling of force. The demon becomes her servant, the chaos becomes order, and the energy of ignorance is turned into the fuel for awakening. This profound symbolism makes Durga more than a goddess of war. She becomes a guide to the spiritual journey itself. In conclusion, Durga, as the warrior goddess who slays inner demons, is not only a mythic heroine, but a timeless spiritual symbol. She represents the courage to confront what binds us, the strength to rise against adversity, and the compassion that sustains us along the way. Her worship unites myth, ritual, psychology, and philosophy, making her one of the most complete figures in Indian spirituality. Through her, the divine feminine is celebrated not as passive or ornamental, but as the very power that transforms the world. By invoking Durga, devotees awaken the warrior within, remembering that the true battle is not against others, but against the demons of the self. Durga remains eternal, for she lives wherever courage and truth triumph over ignorance and fear. Part 3. Kali. Time, Death, and Terrifying Grace. Kali is perhaps the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring form of the divine feminine in India, embodying contradictions that both unsettle and liberate. Her very image defies convention. Wild hair unbound, a garland of skulls, a skirt of severed arms, her tongue lolling out as she dances upon the chest of Shiva. For some, this vision is terrifying, but for devotees, it is the highest expression of divine truth. Kali is not merely a goddess of destruction, but the embodiment of time itself, consuming all beings, all worlds, and even gods. She is death and dissolution, but her grace lies in the fact that by destroying illusions, she opens the way to liberation. Worship of Kali reveals how deeply Indian spirituality embraces paradox. The terrifying can also be compassionate, and death itself can be divine grace. The name Kali derives from Kala, which means time, and she represents time's unstoppable flow. Time devours all things, youth, power, kingdoms, and even stars. Nothing can stand before its advance. Kali personifies this truth, reminding devotees that clinging to permanence is futile. Unlike comforting deities who reassure with order, Kali shakes human beings awake with the raw reality of impermanence. Her dance upon Shiva symbolizes that even the highest consciousness must acknowledge time, and yet paradoxically, she is also beyond time. The skulls and severed limbs she wears are not signs of cruelty but of freedom from attachment to the body, identity, and ego. They signify that the finite must fall away for the infinite to be realized. In worshipping Kali, one accepts the inevitability of death while discovering that the soul itself is indestructible. The most famous myth of Kali's appearance is found in the Devi Mahatmya. During a battle against demons, Durga's wrath gave birth to Kali, who sprang forth dark and ferocious, wielding weapons and unleashing fury upon the Asuras. She consumed their armies, tearing through chaos until the battlefield was drenched with blood. Her intensity was such that even after the battle was won, she could not stop her dance of destruction. To calm her, Shiva lay down beneath her feet, and when she stepped upon him, she stuck out her tongue in shock, regaining awareness. This story is profound in its symbolism. It shows that unchecked energy, even divine, must be balanced by consciousness, represented by Shiva. At the same time, it reveals that Kali is inseparable from the deepest truths of existence: life and death, rage and compassion, energy and awareness. Kali's terrifying form has often been misunderstood, especially by outsiders who see in her only savagery. But for her devotees, every element of her iconography carries profound meaning. Her dark skin represents the womb of the universe, from which all forms emerge and into which they dissolve. Darkness here is not evil, but the fertile void of creation. Her garland of skulls symbolizes the alphabet, the letters of speech, pointing to her as the mother of language and knowledge. The severed arms she wears are the fruits of action, karma itself, which she consumes and liberates. Her sword severs the ego, while her open mouth invites the devotee to surrender all fear. Even her nudity is symbolic, for she is reality stripped bare, without illusion, pure being. To meditate upon Kali is to meditate upon truth without veils. The worship of Kali in Bengal is one of the most vivid expressions of goddess devotion. Kali Puja, celebrated on the new moon night of Diwali, transforms the darkness of night into a festival of light, sound, and reverence. In this ritual, the terrifying becomes intimate, for families and communities approach Kali not as a distant destroyer, but as Ma Kali, the tender mother. Devotees call upon her for protection, for release from suffering, and for the strength to overcome their deepest fears. This maternal aspect is crucial. Though she stands on corpses and drinks blood, she is also the one who cradles her devotees, accepting even their darkest flaws with unconditional love. Her grace is terrifying only because it demands complete surrender, stripping away ego and illusion. Mystics and poets have often turned to Kali to express the inexpressible. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the 19th century saint of Bengal, saw her as the ultimate reality, both playful and profound. To him, Kali was not merely a goddess to be worshipped, but the very fabric of existence. He described her as both the mother who creates the child and the mother who destroys it, yet always with love. His teachings emphasize that her terrifying appearance is only the mask of her boundless compassion. This vision influenced not only Indian spirituality, but also modern interpretations of divine feminine power. Through Kali, Ramakrishna revealed that the path to God is not only through comfort and order, but also through confronting chaos, death, and the unknown. Kali's role in Tantra further deepens her significance. In tantric practice, she is not shunned as a symbol of fear, but embraced as the force that transforms. Practitioners meditate upon her in cremation grounds, surrounded by symbols of death, to confront the impermanence of the body and the futility of clinging to form. In these rituals, Kali is not external but internal, representing the power that destroys ignorance. The raising of Kundalini, the awakening of inner energy, is often linked with her, for she represents the surge of transformative force that shatters illusions. Tantric adepts seek her not for comfort but for awakening, even if that awakening comes through terror. For them, Kali is moksha, liberation itself. The psychological dimension of Kali worship is equally striking. She represents the shadow, the aspects of the psyche that are often repressed, fear of death, suppressed rage, unacknowledged desires. By facing Kali, the devotee symbolically faces these inner demons. Instead of denying or suppressing them, one surrenders them to the goddess, who consumes and transforms them. This process is not easy. It demands honesty, courage, and a willingness to let go of illusions. Yet it is precisely this confrontation that brings freedom. In this way, Kali is not only a cosmic figure, but also an inner archetype, guiding the soul through its darkest fears toward light. Despite her fierce nature, Kali is deeply intertwined with love. In devotional songs and poetry, she is often addressed as the most tender of mothers. Saints like Ramprasad Sen poured out their hearts in hymns to Kali, sometimes scolding her, sometimes pleading with her, always treating her as an intimate presence. This paradox, seeing the terrifying goddess as a loving mother, captures the essence of Indian spirituality. It reveals the conviction that the divine cannot be confined to one aspect. It contains multitudes. Love and terror are two sides of the same truth, and Kali embodies both fully. For devotees, to surrender to her is to trust that even destruction is an act of love, freeing the soul from bondage. Kali also holds social and cultural significance beyond ritual. She has been a symbol of resistance, invoked during times of oppression. During colonial rule, revolutionaries in Bengal saw her as the embodiment of power and freedom, inspiring them to rise against domination. Her fierce image, far from being merely mythological, became a rallying cry for real struggles. Even today, she symbolizes empowerment, particularly for women who see in her a figure of independence, unapologetic strength, and unbound freedom. She challenges conventional roles, reminding society that femininity is not only nurturing but also fierce, capable of shaking the foundations of injustice. In the philosophical tradition, Kali represents the dissolving aspect of the cosmic cycle. While Lakshmi sustains and Saraswati enlightens, Kali consumes. Yet this consumption is not negativity but renewal, for without dissolution, there can be no rebirth. She is the fire that clears the field for new growth, the storm that breaks stagnation. In this sense, she is not only terrifying but necessary. Her grace lies in her ability to strip away what is false, leaving only what is eternal. The devotee who embraces Kali learns not to fear death, but to see it as transformation. In her terrifying grace, the soul finds liberation. In conclusion, Kali as time, death, and terrifying grace is one of the most profound expressions of the divine feminine in India. She is the embodiment of paradox, frightening yet loving, destructive yet liberating, chaotic yet deeply ordered. Her worship challenges the devotee to go beyond comfort and face the ultimate truths of existence, impermanence, ego's futility, and the inevitability of death. Yet in doing so, she offers the deepest grace, the freedom that comes from surrender. Kali is not only a goddess of myth, but also a living force in the hearts of devotees, a reminder that the divine is not always gentle, but is always loving. In her dark and radiant presence, life and death unite, and the soul glimpses eternity. Part 4, Lakshmi and Wealth, Prosperity as a Sacred Principle. Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity, occupies a unique place in the spiritual imagination of India. She is not simply a deity who bestows riches, but a sacred principle that redefines prosperity as something beyond material possessions. Lakshmi's presence is seen in abundance, in the harmony of family life, in the fertility of the fields, in the flourishing of knowledge, and in the beauty of nature. To worship Lakshmi is to revere the idea that wealth, when rooted in Dharma, becomes sacred, a means of sustaining both individual life and the larger order of society. As the consort of Vishnu, the preserver of the cosmos, she symbolizes the balance that holds the universe together, ensuring that prosperity is aligned with righteousness and not with greed. The mythology of Lakshmi's origin illustrates her deep cosmic significance. She is said to have emerged from the churning of the ocean, the great Samudra Manthan, which brought forth both poison and nectar, death and immortality. Lakshmi rose resplendent upon a lotus, adorned with radiance, bringing beauty, grace, and abundance into the world. By choosing Vishnu as her consort, she aligned herself with the principle of preservation, ensuring that wealth supports harmony rather than disruption. Her very emergence from the ocean suggests that prosperity is not isolated, but arises from the deeper currents of existence. from the balance of opposites. In this sense, Lakshmi represents the sacredness of wealth, a divine energy that must be honored with care and responsibility. Lakshmi is most often depicted seated or standing on a lotus, with golden coins flowing from her hands, flanked by elephants pouring water, and surrounded by symbols of abundance. Every aspect of this iconography carries meaning. The lotus signifies purity amidst the mud of life, suggesting that true prosperity is untainted by greed. The elephants, symbols of power and fertility, reveal that wealth is not merely material, but also linked to strength and vitality. The coins flowing from her hands show generosity, for wealth is not to be hoarded but shared. Her calm, compassionate expression reflects the truth that prosperity is sustainable only when joined with peace and balance. Thus, her image is a visual teaching on how wealth should be perceived, not as a possession to be clung to, but as a flow to be honored and circulated. In Indian households, Lakshmi is perhaps the most widely worshipped goddess, for she is seen as the bringer of fortune, harmony, and well-being. Diwali, the festival of lights, is her most important celebration. On this night, homes are illuminated with lamps, floors are decorated with intricate rangoli patterns, and offerings are made to invite the goddess into the household. The lighting of lamps symbolizes the victory of light over darkness, prosperity over poverty, and wisdom over ignorance. Families clean and adorn their homes in preparation, believing that Lakshmi visits only those dwellings that are pure and orderly. The rituals are not merely about seeking material gain, but about reaffirming values of cleanliness, discipline, and gratitude. Diwali thus becomes both a cultural and spiritual affirmation of prosperity as sacred. Yet Lakshmi is not confined to material prosperity. In Vedic hymns and later traditions, she is often invoked as Shri, a word that encompasses radiance, auspiciousness, and grace. Shri is not about wealth in isolation, but about the flourishing of life in all its dimensions: health, knowledge, relationships, and joy. This broader vision is essential to understanding Lakshmi as a sacred principle. Without Shri, wealth becomes sterile or even destructive. With Shri, prosperity nurtures not only individuals but also communities. To invoke Lakshmi is to invite wholeness, where resources, both inner and outer, are aligned with the rhythms of life. The ethical dimension of Lakshmi's worship is also central. Prosperity is not seen as mere accumulation but as rightful earning and rightful use. The concept of dana, wealth, is always paired with dharma, righteousness. In the epics and Puranas, stories abound of those who misused wealth and suffered downfall. The Mahabharata, for instance, illustrates how unchecked greed leads to disaster. In contrast, when wealth is guided by dharma, it supports the flourishing of society and the fulfillment of life's purposes. Lakshmi, therefore, is not merely a giver of riches, but a guardian of balance, reminding worshippers that prosperity without ethics is hollow. This is why rituals often include prayers for discernment, asking not only for abundance but for the wisdom to use it well. Lakshmi also plays a vital role in sustaining family and social harmony. In many traditions, the woman of the household is seen as Griha Lakshmi, the embodiment of the goddess within the home. She is honored as the keeper of prosperity, the one who ensures that wealth, however small, is nurtured with care and respect. This reflects the belief that prosperity is not measured by riches alone, but by the warmth and stability of relationships. In this way, Lakshmi worship strengthens the sacredness of everyday life, rooting prosperity not only in economics, but also in love, trust, and shared responsibility. The family becomes a temple where the goddess resides, honored through mutual respect and gratitude. In philosophical terms, Lakshmi represents the sustaining energy of existence. While Kali dissolves and Saraswati enlightens, Lakshmi nourishes and supports. She is the flow of energy that allows growth, creativity, and flourishing. In the Bhagavata Purana, she is described as inseparable from Vishnu, for preservation cannot exist without sustenance. This unity shows that prosperity is not independent, but part of a larger cosmic order. Just as Vishnu maintains balance, Lakshmi provides the resources to sustain it. This interdependence is a reminder that wealth is sacred only when aligned with the greater good, serving the harmony of the whole. Lakshmi's symbolism extends even further into nature and ecology. She is associated with fertility of the earth, with rivers, crops, and seasons of abundance. In rural traditions, the harvest is seen as Lakshmi's blessing, and rituals of thanksgiving are performed to honor her. This connection reveals that prosperity is not only human-centered, but part of the natural order. To disrespect nature, to exploit resources without gratitude, is to dishonor Lakshmi. In this way, her worship reinforces ecological awareness, teaching that wealth comes from harmony with the environment. The sacredness of the earth, the cycles of rain and harvest, and the interdependence of all beings are woven into her presence. Part 5. Saraswati, Goddess of Wisdom and Cosmic Sound. Saraswati is one of the most refined and revered forms of the divine feminine in India, embodying wisdom, knowledge, eloquence, and the subtle vibrations of sound that shape the universe. Her presence is serene rather than fierce, clothed in white garments, seated upon a lotus or swan, holding the veena, the book, the rosary, and a vessel of water. She represents clarity of mind and purity of thought, the kind of prosperity that transcends material wealth and nurtures the intellect, the arts, and the pursuit of truth. To worship Saraswati is to recognize that the world itself is sustained not only by strength or abundance, but by wisdom, discernment, and the power of the spoken word. Her role in Indian spirituality affirms that knowledge is divine, and that sound itself, when rightly understood, is cosmic. The roots of Saraswati reach back to the Vedas, where she first appears not only as a goddess, but also as a river. In the Rigveda, Saraswati is described as a mighty river that nourishes the land and sustains life, flowing between the Yamuna and Sutlej. Over time, her identity expanded beyond the physical river to encompass spiritual symbolism, becoming associated with clarity, inspiration, and wisdom. Hymns praise her as the best of mothers, the best of rivers, the best of goddesses. This transition from river to goddess reflects a profound shift, where the physical flow of water becomes the metaphorical flow of knowledge. In later traditions, Saraswati emerges fully as the goddess of learning and music, but her ancient connection to water endures in the vessel she holds, symbolizing purification, continuity, and the stream of wisdom. As the goddess of wisdom, Saraswati represents the higher pursuit of life's purpose, while Lakshmi grants material prosperity and Durga embodies strength. Saraswati offers the illumination that guides both wealth and power toward righteousness. She is the embodiment of Vidya, true knowledge that leads to liberation. The book she carries symbolizes learning and scripture. The rosary points to meditation and devotion, while the veena represents the harmony of art and music. Her white garments signify purity, detachment, and the clarity that comes from wisdom untainted by selfish desire. In this way, Saraswati becomes not only a goddess of education, but a cosmic principle, embodying the pursuit of truth that liberates the soul. One of Saraswati's most profound associations is with sound. In Vedic and tantric traditions, sound is not merely vibration, but the foundation of creation. The syllable aum, the primordial sound, is considered the seed of the universe, and Saraswati is the goddess who presides over such vibrations. Speech, song, mantra, and chant all fall under her domain. She is Vak, the power of speech, whose voice animates the gods themselves. In this sense, Saraswati is both the source of human expression and the cosmic resonance underlying all existence. To chant her name or invoke her presence is to align oneself with the creative sound that permeates the universe. Her veena, strummed in iconography and imagination, is the symbol of this harmony, suggesting that the cosmos itself is a symphony conducted by the goddess. Saraswati is honored most prominently during Vasant Panchami, a spring festival dedicated to her worship. On this day, devotees, especially students and artists, dress in yellow, a color associated with energy and wisdom, and offer prayers to the goddess. Books, musical instruments, and tools of learning are placed before her image, seeking her blessing for clarity of thought and mastery of skill. The rituals are often simple, emphasizing sincerity rather than grandeur, reflecting Saraswati's preference for purity over opulence. For children, this festival often marks the beginning of their education, with the ritual of Akshar Abhyasam, writing the first letters under the goddess's guidance. This reveals how deeply Saraswati is embedded not only in philosophical traditions, but also in the intimate rhythms of family and community life. Philosophically, Saraswati embodies the transformative power of knowledge. Ignorance, in Indian thought, is the root of bondage, while true knowledge leads to liberation. Saraswati, as the goddess of wisdom, represents this liberating vidya, yet she is not only about intellectual learning, but also about intuitive insight, the kind of knowing that comes from inner stillness. The rosary in her hand suggests that wisdom is inseparable from meditation and devotion. Knowledge, in her vision, is not dry accumulation of facts, but the illumination that reveals the unity of existence. This is why she is invoked not only by scholars but also by yogis, saints, and seekers who look to her for the clarity that dissolves delusion. The association of Saraswati with rivers and flowing water also carries deep symbolism. Just as rivers cleanse, sustain, and connect different regions, wisdom purifies the mind, nourishes the soul, and links human beings to the divine. In some traditions, the Saraswati River is said to flow invisibly, joining the Ganga and Yamuna at the confluence of Prayagraj. This unseen river mirrors the subtle flow of knowledge, often hidden, yet profoundly present. Her invisible presence reminds devotees that true wisdom is not always apparent, but flows beneath the surface of experience, waiting to be tapped through devotion and practice. This vision elevates Saraswati from a cultural deity to a cosmic principle, manifest in both the seen and the unseen. Saraswati also holds a central role in the arts. Musicians, poets, dancers, and painters invoke her as their patroness, believing that inspiration itself is her gift. In classical Indian thought, art is not mere entertainment, but a path to the divine, a way of expressing cosmic truths through beauty. The veena, her instrument, is often interpreted as the human body, with its strings symbolizing the different states of mind and the resonance of the soul. When the goddess plays, the discordant becomes harmonious, reflecting how wisdom brings order to chaos. By invoking Saraswati, artists seek not only skill, but also the grace to express truth through form and sound. In tantric and philosophical traditions, Saraswati is sometimes seen as the consort of Brahma, the creator god. This association emphasizes her role in creation, for even divine will requires knowledge and speech to manifest. Yet she is never portrayed as dependent, for her presence is autonomous, woven into the fabric of reality itself. In some Shakti traditions, Saraswati is not merely the companion of a god, but the supreme goddess in her own right, another aspect of Mahadevi, the great goddess. This reflects the fluidity of Indian thought, where the divine feminine shifts between being consort, companion, and ultimate principle, always essential and never secondary. The worship of Saraswati has also served as a bridge between the sacred and the everyday. She is not distant, dwelling only in lofty temples, but present in every act of learning, every attempt at expression, every note of music, and every written word. Students bow to her before exams, children invoke her before learning to write, and artists turn to her before performance. This intimacy makes her one of the most beloved deities, especially for those who seek not wealth or power, but clarity, understanding, and creativity. Her presence reminds people that knowledge itself is sacred, that to learn and to teach are acts of devotion. In conclusion, Saraswati, as the goddess of wisdom and cosmic sound, represents one of the most subtle and profound dimensions of the divine feminine in India. She is the flow of rivers and of knowledge, the resonance of sound and of speech, the purity of thought and of art. Her worship affirms that prosperity is not only material, but also intellectual, cultural, and spiritual. Through her, the goddess is seen not as warrior or provider, but as teacher, guide, and inspiration. By invoking Saraswati, devotees align themselves with the truth that the universe is song, that sound is sacred, and that wisdom is the path to liberation. She remains eternal, flowing like an unseen river, sustaining the quest for clarity and the harmony of life. Part 6. Navaratri, the Festival of Divine Energy. Navaratri, one of the most important and widely celebrated festivals in India, is at its heart a grand homage to the goddess in her many forms. The word Navaratri literally means 9 nights, and during these sacred days, devotees worship Shakti, the divine feminine energy that sustains, protects, and transforms the universe. The festival embodies the belief that energy is the essence of existence, that divinity is not distant, but manifest in the rhythms of life itself. Through rituals, fasting, dance, music, and storytelling, Navaratri celebrates the goddess as the force who destroys darkness and grants renewal. It is both a communal and deeply personal festival, uniting entire regions in devotion while inviting individuals to confront their own inner demons and seek blessings for growth and harmony. The festival is rooted in myth, most prominently the story of the goddess Durga's battle with the buffalo demon Mahishasura. According to the Devi Mahatmya, when Mahishasura obtained a boon that made him invincible against men and gods, his tyranny spread unchecked. The Devas, unable to defeat him, combined their energies, and from this radiant force emerged Durga, armed with the weapons of all the gods. For 9 days and nights she fought Mahishasura and his army, finally slaying him on the 10th day. This victory is commemorated as Vijayadashami, or Dussehra, the triumph of the goddess over forces of chaos and arrogance. Beyond the myth, the story is an allegory for the struggles of the human soul, with Navaratri representing a journey of cleansing, discipline, and eventual victory over ignorance. Navaratri is not a single festival but takes different forms across India, each emphasizing distinct aspects of the goddess and her energy. In Bengal, it is celebrated as Durga Puja, where grand idols of Durga with her children are worshipped before being immersed in rivers. In Gujarat and Maharashtra, it is marked by nights of Garba and Dandiya, circular dances symbolizing the cosmic play of energy. In Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, households set up elaborate arrangements of dolls called Golu, representing divine figures, mythological scenes, and the cycles of life. In Himachal and northern states, processions of local deities honor the goddess as the mother of all. Despite the regional variations, the essence remains the same: to honor the power of the divine feminine and to remind oneself that energy governs creation, preservation, and dissolution. The 9 days of Navaratri are often divided into 3 sets of 3, each dedicated to a particular aspect of the goddess. The first 3 days are devoted to Durga, the fierce warrior who removes obstacles and purifies the devotee of impurities. The next 3 honor Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, who grants both material and spiritual prosperity. The final 3 celebrate Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, knowledge, and the arts, guiding the soul towards enlightenment. This progression reflects a spiritual journey. First, destruction of negativity. Second, the nurturing of growth. And finally, illumination through wisdom. On the 10th day, Vijayadashami, the victory of good over evil, is celebrated, marking both the end of the goddess's battle and the devotee's symbolic triumph over inner darkness. Fasting and austerities during Navaratri are not merely ritual acts, but expressions of aligning oneself with the rhythm of divine energy. Devotees often abstain from grains, meat, and alcohol, consuming light, sattvic food to purify body and mind. Many meditate, recite mantras such as the Devi Suktam, and engage in extended worship. The discipline of fasting is seen as a way of conserving energy and redirecting it towards spiritual growth. It is believed that during Navaratri, cosmic energy is especially vibrant, and by observing discipline, one can absorb and harmonize with this force. Thus, the festival becomes a period of inner renewal, as much about personal transformation as about community celebration. One of the most striking aspects of Navaratri is its emphasis on dance and music, particularly in Western India. Garba and Dandiya, performed in circular patterns, are not simply festive entertainment, but carry deep symbolic meaning. The circle represents the eternal cycle of time, with the lamp or image of the goddess at the center, signifying the source of all energy. As people dance around the center, they enact the truth that all movement, all life, revolves around the divine. The rhythmic clapping, drumming, and colorful attire transform the nights into vibrant affirmations of life, joy, and devotion. In these dances, the community comes together as one body, celebrating the presence of Shakti in every heartbeat and every step. In the Eastern tradition of Durga Puja, the goddess is worshipped as the mother visiting her maternal home with her children. For 4 to 5 days, communities build elaborate pandals housing beautifully crafted idols of Durga slaying Mahishasura. The rituals are accompanied by music, art, food, and theatrical performances, turning cities like Kolkata into vast arenas of devotion and celebration. The immersion of the idols in rivers or seas at the festival's end is symbolic. The goddess, who came in visible form, now returns to the cosmic waters, reminding devotees that her presence is eternal, though unseen. The blending of art, devotion, and philosophy in Durga Puja shows how deeply Navaratri resonates with cultural and spiritual life. Navaratri also holds deep psychological and philosophical meaning. The battle of the goddess against demons is often seen as an allegory for the struggles within the human mind. Mahishasura symbolizes ignorance, arrogance, and uncontrolled desire, while the goddess represents clarity, courage, and discipline. Each day of Navaratri becomes an opportunity for devotees to reflect on their own inner demons and to invoke the goddess's energy to overcome them. The recitation of stories, singing of hymns, and collective rituals serve as reminders that life itself is a battlefield, where the victory of good over evil begins not outside but within. This interpretation has kept Navaratri alive as not just a cultural festival, but also a spiritual path of inner renewal. The festival also reflects the unique Indian vision of the divine feminine as central to existence. While many cultures worship gods as supreme, Navaratri proclaims that without Shakti, there is no creation, no preservation, and no destruction. The goddess is not marginal but foundational, and the 9 nights emphasize her manifold roles. By honoring her as Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati, devotees recognize that power, prosperity, and wisdom are all feminine energies, and that they must be balanced for life to flourish. This vision elevates the feminine not only in mythology but also in daily life, reminding people to honor the presence of the divine feminine in mothers, daughters, and women of the community. Rituals during Navaratri also embody inclusivity and community spirit. In many villages, collective meals called annadanam are organized, where food is offered as prasad to all, symbolizing equality before the goddess. The worship of Kanya, young girls, is another important ritual, where girls are honored as embodiments of the goddess herself, their feet washed and offered gifts. This ritual reminds society of the sanctity of the feminine and the need to respect and protect it. Through such acts, Navaratri becomes more than worship. It becomes a practice of ethical and social values rooted in reverence for life. The universality of Navaratri lies in its ability to unite philosophy, ritual, art, and community. It is a time when people, regardless of caste, creed, or status, come together in devotion. The lights of Diwali may dazzle, the music of Garba may resound, the grandeur of Durga Puja may enthrall, but at the heart of all lies the same truth, the celebration of divine energy. This inclusivity shows how goddess worship in India transcends divisions, embodying the shared belief that the feminine principle sustains the universe. In Navaratri, the divine is not abstract, but present in every lamp, every song, every offering, and every heart that bows before the goddess. In conclusion, Navaratri, as the festival of divine energy, represents one of the most profound celebrations of goddess worship in India. It brings together mythology, devotion, philosophy, and cultural expression into 9 nights of collective transformation. The goddess is honored as warrior, nurturer, and guide, leading devotees from fear to strength, from scarcity to abundance, from ignorance to wisdom. The rituals, dances, fasts, and celebrations all affirm that energy is sacred and that life itself is sustained by the feminine principle. By participating in Navaratri, people do not simply remember a mythic battle, but enact the eternal truth that light triumphs over darkness, and that the divine feminine is the pulse that moves the universe. Part 7. The Yoginis, 64 Goddesses of Tantric Mysticism. Among the most mysterious and fascinating expressions of goddess worship in India is the tradition of the Yoginis, 64 female divinities revered in the Tantric tradition. Unlike the more widely worshipped deities such as Durga, Lakshmi, or Kali, The yoginis occupy a liminal, secretive space associated with esoteric practices, magical rites, and transformative powers. They are not always gentle or motherly, but wild, fierce, and unpredictable, embodying aspects of existence that lie beyond social order. The yoginis reveal a vision of the divine feminine that is free, unbounded, and deeply connected with the hidden forces of the universe. To study them is to glimpse a different dimension of Indian spirituality, one where energy is raw, untamed, and yet profoundly sacred. The number 64 has symbolic resonance in Tantra, representing completeness, multiplicity, and the totality of energies. The yoginis are said to be emanations of the goddess, fragments of Shakti manifesting in varied forms, each with distinct attributes, appearances, and powers. They are often depicted as dancing in circles, forming a mandala of cosmic energy. This circle, known as the Chausath Yogini Chakra, is both a geometric diagram for meditation and a living symbol of the cyclical nature of existence. Within this circle, the yoginis are not subordinate but autonomous, each embodying an aspect of reality, whether nurturing or destructive, beautiful or terrifying. Their diversity reflects the tantric insight that the divine feminine cannot be confined to a single image, but must be embraced in all its manifestations. Architectural remains of yogini temples provide a window into their worship. Found in states like Odisha and Madhya Pradesh, these temples are unique in design, often circular or hypaethral, open to the sky, unlike the towering shikaras of mainstream Hindu shrines. The most famous are at Hirapur near Bhubaneswar, Ranipur Jarial, Khajuraho, and Betaghat near Jabalpur. The circular form of these temples echoes the mandala, the dance of energies, without beginning or end. The images of yoginis in these temples are strikingly diverse, some graceful and serene, others fearsome, with animal heads or grotesque features, holding skulls or weapons. The very variety emphasizes their role as embodiments of every possible force in the universe, from fertility and prosperity to chaos and destruction. Worship of the yoginis was not meant for ordinary ritual, but was part of tantric practices that sought to harness hidden energies. Unlike conventional worship focused on offerings and hymns, tantric rites involved meditation, mantras, visualizations, and sometimes transgressive acts meant to break through ordinary boundaries of thought and behavior. The yoginis were invoked for siddhis, or supernatural powers, ranging from control over elements to mastery of inner consciousness. They were also protectors, guardians of the practitioner, who had entered the dangerous but transformative path of Tantra. Their worship required courage, for they represented energies that could overwhelm as easily as they could liberate. The yoginis embody the paradoxical nature of the divine feminine. On one hand, they are mothers, givers of fertility, associated with the cycles of nature and the powers of reproduction. On the other hand, they are fierce, drinking blood, standing upon corpses, riding upon wild animals. They remind the practitioner that life and death, creation and destruction are inseparable. To honor them is to honor the wholeness of existence, not merely the comfortable aspects. In this sense, the yoginis are akin to Kali, but multiplied into 64 forms, each showing a facet of the truth. They teach that spiritual awakening comes not by avoiding the terrifying, but by embracing and transcending it. The circle of yoginis also has psychological significance. Each goddess represents not only an external force, but also an internal tendency, a psychological energy that shapes human behavior. Some embody desire, others anger, others compassion or serenity. In tantric meditation, to visualize the yoginis is to confront these inner energies, to recognize and integrate them rather than repress them. This makes the yoginis a mirror for the practitioner, revealing the fragmented self in its fullness. By worshiping them, the seeker learns to balance conflicting forces, to transform impulses into awareness, and to realize that all aspects of the psyche are ultimately divine. While the yoginis belong to the esoteric stream of Tantra, traces of their presence have seeped into folk traditions and local practices. In many villages, local goddesses with fierce temperaments, often associated with disease, fertility, or protection, bear resemblance to the yoginis. These local deities are worshipped not with grand temples but with simple shrines under trees or by ponds, and they are approached with both reverence and fear. This continuity between folk goddesses and tantric yoginis reveals how deeply rooted the idea of multiple feminine powers is in Indian spirituality. The divine feminine is never singular but endlessly plural, shaping itself to meet the needs and fears of different communities. Scholars have often interpreted the yogini cult as subversive, for it does not fit neatly into the hierarchical order of Orthodox Hinduism. The yoginis are not bound to one god, not consorts or subordinates, but independent powers, often worshipped in liminal spaces outside the boundaries of towns. Their worship challenged the dominance of male priesthood, for tantric rites were often practiced in secrecy, outside mainstream institutions. This independence has made the yogini symbols of freedom, embodying the truth that the feminine divine cannot be fully contained within structures of authority. They stand for the wild, the marginal, the beyond, forces that may frighten but are essential for renewal. The number 64 also resonates with the arts, for in classical Indian traditions, there are said to be 64 kalas or skills, ranging from music and dance to painting and philosophy. Some traditions link the yoginis with these arts, suggesting that they are not only guardians of spiritual power, but also of creativity. In this vision, every skill, every act of beauty is an offering of the goddess. To dance, to sing, to paint, is to invoke a yogini, to channel her energy into human form. This connection reinforces the idea that the divine feminine is not abstract, but manifest in the living creativity of human beings. Despite their marginal position in mainstream worship, the yoginis continue to fascinate both scholars and seekers today. Their temples, often in ruins, evoke a sense of mystery, as if the rituals performed there left traces in the very stones. Pilgrims and researchers who visit these sites often describe a palpable energy, a sense of being in a space set apart from ordinary life. The circular design, open to the elements, enhances this sense of cosmic connection, reminding visitors that the divine cannot be confined within walls, but is expansive, infinite, and wild. The yoginis, though less visible than Durga or Lakshmi, remain guardians of this dimension of the divine feminine. In conclusion, the yoginis, as 64 goddesses of tantric mysticism, represent one of the most profound and enigmatic expressions of goddess worship in India. They embody the truth that divinity is plural, multifaceted, and uncontainable. Their worship invites practitioners to confront not only the external forces of the cosmos, but also the inner complexities of the self. They remind us that the divine feminine is not only nurturing but also fierce, not only orderly but also chaotic, not only beautiful but also terrifying. To honor the yoginis is to honor the wholeness of life, the circle of existence in all its diversity. In their mysticism lies a timeless message, that liberation comes not by escaping reality, but by embracing it in its fullness, through the terrifying grace of the goddess, in her 64 forms. Part 8. Devi in the Vedas, Ancient Roots of the Feminine Divine. The worship of the goddess in India has deep roots that stretch back to the earliest layers of sacred literature, the Vedas. Long before Durga, Lakshmi, or Kali were celebrated as distinct deities, the hymns of the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda sang of the feminine divine as an inseparable aspect of cosmic order. In these ancient verses, the goddess appears not merely as a figure of mythology, but as the very principles of speech, dawn, knowledge, fertility, and sovereignty. The Vedic hymns do not describe her in elaborate anthropomorphic images, but through symbolic and poetic expressions, suggesting that the divine feminine was first experienced as the life-giving and illuminating forces of nature. To trace the Devi and the Vedas is to discover the earliest intuition that Shakti, the feminine power, moves the universe. One of the most striking feminine figures in the Vedas is Vak, the goddess of speech. In the Rig Veda, she proclaims herself as the source of all wisdom and power, declaring that the gods themselves derive their authority through her. Vak is more than mere sound. She is the principle that turns thought into word, the bridge between mind and world. Speech, in Vedic understanding, is creative, capable of shaping reality, and therefore revered as divine. The hymn to Vak reveals an early recognition of the feminine as the inspirer and sustainer of knowledge. In later traditions, she becomes identified with Saraswati, the goddess of learning, but in the Vedic vision she already stood as a cosmic force, an embodiment of the sacred word. Another key Vedic goddess is Ushas, the dawn. She is described in luminous hymns as the young maiden who awakens the world each morning, driving away darkness, stirring life into motion. Ushas is not only a natural phenomenon, but a symbol of renewal, hope, and the cyclical rhythms of time. She embodies the promise that night, however long, is always followed by light. The Rigvedic poets celebrate her beauty, her generosity, and her tireless journey across the heavens. In their reverence for Ushas, the seers perceived the feminine divine in the cycles of nature as the energy that sustains life and marks the passage of time. Her worship reveals how intimately the Vedic mind connected spirituality with the natural world. Prithvi, the earth, also occupies a central place in Vedic thought. She is revered as the mother of all beings, fertile and nurturing, supporting mountains, rivers, plants, and creatures. Hymns to Prithvi often pair her with Deities, the Sky Father, reflecting the cosmic duality of male and female principles. Yet it is Prithvi who is described as the bearer of life, the one who receives seeds and nourishes them into abundance. This vision of Earth as mother shaped the enduring Indian reverence for land and soil, where the earth is never merely matter but sacred being. The later idea of Bhumi Devi, the earth goddess, has its earliest echoes in these Vedic hymns, where the feminine is honored as the foundation of life itself. A more abstract but equally profound presence of the feminine divine appears in the hymns to Aditi. She is the mother of the Adityas, the celestial deities associated with order, truth, and cosmic harmony. Aditi's name itself means boundless or limitless, and she is described as the infinite womb, the all-encompassing space that births the gods and shelters existence. Unlike Ushas or Prithvi, who embody specific aspects of nature, Aditi represents a vast metaphysical principle, the feminine as infinity. In her, we see the seeds of later Shakta philosophy, where the goddess is understood not as one deity among others, but as the very ground of being. Aditi's presence in the Vedas reveals the depth with which the ancient seers envisioned the feminine divine, not only as nurturing and protective, but as transcendent. The Vedic vision of the goddess was not limited to benevolent forms. Fierce feminine powers also appear, such as Ratri, the goddess of night, who is both protective and mysterious. She is invoked to ward off dangers that lurk in the dark, yet she is also praised for her beauty and grace. The duality of night, as both a time of rest and of fear, is reflected in her hymns. This ambivalence toward the feminine, nurturing yet formidable, protective yet unpredictable, would later blossom in the forms of Durga and Kali. The Vedas thus already contained the intuition that the feminine divine encompasses the full spectrum of experience, from comfort to awe. The Vedic sacrificial rituals also highlight the role of the feminine divine. Many of the offerings were dedicated to goddesses as embodiments of fertility, abundance, and well-being. The very act of sacrifice was often described in feminine terms, with the altar seen as the womb where offerings were placed, gestating into blessings. This symbolism reveals how deeply the feminine principle permeated not only the deities invoked, but also the very structure of ritual practice. The goddess was not only worshipped but enacted, embodied in the sacred fire, the offerings, and the spoken chants. The Atharva Veda, with its more magical and domestic hymns, preserves another dimension of the goddess. Here, feminine powers are invoked for protection of households, healing of diseases, and safeguarding of fertility. Goddesses appear as guardians of crops, children, and marriages, showing that the feminine divine was not only cosmic, but also intimately tied to daily life. This aspect connects directly with later folk traditions, where local goddesses are worshipped for practical well-being. The Atharva Vedic hymns thus bridge the lofty metaphysical vision of the Rig Veda with the lived religiosity of communities. Perhaps the most revealing hymn about the feminine divine in the Vedas is the Devi Sukta of the Rig Veda, attributed to the seer woman Ambrini. In this extraordinary hymn, the goddess declares herself as the sovereign of the world, the source of all gods, the ruler of all beings. She proclaims that through her alone the universe breathes, eats, sees, and hears. The Devi Sukta is not merely a praise of the goddess, but a declaration of the ultimate unity of existence as feminine power. It anticipates the later Shakti texts that describe the goddess as the supreme reality, showing that the roots of goddess worship as supreme devotion already lay in the Vedic age. The presence of the feminine divine in the Vedas also reflects the role of women as seers and composers of hymns. Several hymns are attributed to female rishis such as Ghosha, Lopamudra, and Apala. Their voices contribute to the vision of the divine as feminine, not only as an abstract principle, but as a lived reality experienced by women themselves. This suggests that the worship of Devi was not imposed from above, but grew organically from both male and female experiences of the sacred. The very fact that women composed hymns to the gods and goddesses reveals a society that, at least in its early stages, recognized the spiritual authority of the feminine. In conclusion, the Devi of the Vedas reveals the ancient roots of goddess worship in India long before the elaborate myths and temple traditions of later centuries. Through Ushas, Vak, Prithvi, Aditi, and the Devi Sukta, the Vedic seers celebrated the feminine divine as speech, dawn, earth, infinity, and sovereign of the cosmos. The hymns capture the intuition that the feminine is not marginal but central, not confined to nurturing alone but also encompassing power, mystery, and transcendence. These early insights laid the foundation for the vast tapestry of goddess traditions that followed, shaping Indian spirituality into one of the richest celebrations of the divine feminine in the world. The Devi of the Vedas continues to echo through time, reminding us that the roots of Shakti lie in the earliest human attempts to sing of the sacred. Part 9. Goddesses in Every Village. Local Forms, Universal Power. One of the most striking aspects of goddess worship in India is its sheer ubiquity. From grand temples that draw millions, to humble shrines beneath trees or beside ponds, the goddess is everywhere. Each village, each region, often has its own form of Devi, known by local names, embodying both protective and fearsome qualities. These local goddesses are not distant figures of philosophy, but immediate presences, guardians of the community's well-being, fertility, health, and safety. They may be represented as stone icons, clay figures, or even uncarved rocks, yet their presence is felt as real, alive, and responsive. In this way, goddess worship transcends boundaries of class, caste, and learning, weaving the divine feminine into the very soil of India. These local goddesses often have unique stories that connect them to the land and its people. In Tamil Nadu, deities such as Mariamman are revered as protectors against smallpox and diseases, reflecting an ancient association of goddesses with health and healing. In Maharashtra, goddesses like Yellamma and Renuka embody both fertility and power, invoked during times of crisis. In Bengal and Assam, village goddesses may appear as bloodthirsty protectors, demanding animal sacrifice, while in other places they are gentle mothers, invoked for rain and crops. The diversity of these forms reflects the adaptability of Shakti. She takes on the role the community most urgently needs, whether as healer, warrior, or nurturer. One fascinating aspect of these village deities is their often fierce and untamed nature. Unlike the polished icons of Lakshmi or Saraswati, local goddesses frequently embody raw power. They may be represented as headless figures, stones anointed with vermilion, or fierce mothers with wide eyes and weapons. Their shrines are sometimes located at village boundaries, crossroads, or cremation grounds, places associated with danger and liminality. This placement reflects their role as protectors of thresholds, keeping evil at bay and ensuring safety within the community. To worship them is not only an act of devotion, but also a recognition of life's uncertainties, an appeal to divine power to safeguard against calamity. The rituals surrounding local goddesses are often vibrant, communal, and deeply tied to seasonal rhythms. Festivals may involve animal sacrifice, drumming, dancing, and processions, blending sacred and folk traditions. At harvest time, offerings of grain or the first fruits of the season are made to the goddess, acknowledging her role in fertility and abundance. Women play a central role in these rituals, carrying pots of water, singing songs, or embodying the goddess in trance. Such practices affirm the connection between the feminine principle and the cycles of nature, reminding villagers that prosperity and survival depend on honoring the energies that sustain life. Local goddess worship also serves as a means of social cohesion. Villagers, regardless of caste or wealth, often come together in devotion, sharing food, offerings, and collective rituals. The goddess belongs to everyone, transcending social hierarchies. At the same time, she can also be a figure of justice. Stories abound of local deities punishing liars, oath-breakers, or exploiters, reinforcing community values and ethics. In this way, the goddess is not only divine, but also judicial, a moral force that upholds order in daily life. Her worship reminds people that divine feminine power is not abstract, but woven into the structures of community living. Folk goddesses also reveal how porous the boundaries are between local and pan-Indian traditions. Mariamman, once a village protector, is now revered in great temples. Deities like Kamakya in Assam or Meenakshi in Madurai began as local goddesses before being incorporated into wider Shakta traditions. This movement from local to universal shows that no form of Devi is too humble to embody ultimate power. The goddess who guards a single hamlet can, over centuries, come to be worshipped across the subcontinent, reflecting the belief that all goddesses are ultimately one Shakti. This dynamic interplay between the local and the universal is what gives goddess worship in India its extraordinary vitality. The relationship between the goddess and her devotees in village traditions is often intensely personal. She is seen as a mother who can be pleased, angered, soothed, or persuaded. Her moods are felt in the fortunes of crops, in the spread of disease, in the harmony of families. Devotees often speak of her as if she were a living member of the community, someone who must be respected, appeased, and cared for. This intimacy distinguishes local goddess worship from the more formalized rituals of elite temples. It reflects a vision of the divine feminine not as distant perfection, but as a tangible, emotional, responsive power, deeply involved in human affairs. One important aspect of village goddess traditions is their connection to women's lives. Many rituals are performed by women who invoke the goddess for fertility, protection during childbirth, health of children, and domestic harmony. In some cases, possession rituals occur, where women enter trance states and embody the goddess, delivering her messages to the community. These practices give women a central role in religious life, empowering them as carriers of sacred authority. Through the goddess, women find voice, agency, and respect in contexts where they might otherwise be marginalized. Thus, local goddess worship is not only about divinity, but also about affirming the power of the feminine in society. Anthropologists have often noted that these village deities reflect the raw and primal aspects of life: birth, death, fertility, disease, weather, and survival. Unlike the polished theological visions of Devi as the ultimate cosmic principle, the village goddess is immediate and practical. She embodies the anxieties and hopes of everyday existence, yet this does not diminish her significance. Rather, it grounds the divine feminine in lived reality. By worshiping her, villagers acknowledge that the sacred is present in every aspect of life, from planting seeds to facing epidemics. The universal power of Devi is thus experienced not only in lofty hymns, but in the dust of village roads and the cries of everyday life. In conclusion, the goddesses of every village reveal the universality of the divine feminine in India. Though they appear in countless local forms with different names, rituals, and temperaments, they all embody Shakti, the sacred energy that sustains life. Whether fierce protectors or gentle mothers, they link communities to the rhythms of nature, enforce social justice, and provide intimate access to the divine. Their worship shows that the goddess is not confined to grand temples or philosophical texts, but lives in every field, home, and heart. The local forms of Devi remind us that universal power is always present in the particular, that the divine feminine is both cosmic and personal, infinite and immediate. Through them, the sacred pulse of Shakti flows into every village, every household, and every life.